Sorry, I don't know who muted me, and I don't know when it was muted.
You did
And I have gone far.
over 20 minutes.
You said?
Over 20 minutes ago, we couldn't hear you. I said over 20 minutes ago, we couldn't hear you again. We've been trying to.
I don't know how,
Yes.
how I don't know when. Oh, I don't know how. Can you remember where the last part you had?
The last part I heard was, my Lord, when you said that the employer, there was no employer-employee relationship again, as at the date the dismissal letter was served. That's the last part we heard you.
Okay.
Yes. Yes.
Maybe let me start from here. Applying the above enumerated principles of law to the case at hand, or resignation and dismissal, it will be correct to state that from the date the dependent received Exhibit C from the claimant, i.e. 11th day of March 2019, the relationship of master and servant between the claimant and the dependent has ended, has ceased to exist, as the dependent has no right to reject the only option open to the defendant was to have instituted an action against the claimant to pursue its interest that was battered as a result of the alleged claimant's infractions or misdemeanors. The defendant has no to adduce cogent and compelling evidence to explain its indolence for going into slumber for up to 3 years before waking up. It is too late in the day insofar as the issue of resignation is concerned. As the equitable maxim says, equity is the vigilant and not the indolent. One may even be tempted to ask, does it make sense to claim that the claimant is still having employer-employee relationships between the claimant and the dependent from 11th day of October 2019, when Exhibit C was received by the defendant, up to the second day of June 2022, when Exhibit E letter of dismissal was issued, when there was no evidence. There is no evidence to show that claimant was either on suspension or has been going to work and had been receiving salaries from the claimant, from the defendant, for the period of those 3 years after he had submitted his letter of resignation and have taken appointment with another organization. There is no any evidence adduced on the purported regulations and policy of the CPN on acceptance of resignation. Exhibit E or E16 is not evidence of regulation or policy. It is simply a letter informing the dependent of receipt of petition of the claimant against the dependent on the refusal to accept claimant's resignation. With the receipt of Exhibit C, the dependent has lost power of control over the claimant, which he had by virtue of his employer-employee relationship between them. As from 11th day of March 2019, when the claimant had resigned from the defendant and left the services of the claimant, there was no longer employer-employee relationship between the parties. To make the claimant subject to disciplinary procedure and processes of the dependent in law, to make claimant subject to the process and procedure of the dependent. In law, the dependent does not have power to discipline an employee that has left his services. In the counter affidavit, it was stated that claimant was queried after twice and appeared before the disciplinary committee twice. I can only find the query regarding to 2017 infractions, and I cannot find any query that was served on the claimant in 2019. The decision based on that query, on the query of 2017, was suspension, and that suspension had been served, and that has ended the issue insofar as the infraction of 2017 are concerned. For the 2019, the query that was said to have been issued to the claimant has not been exhibited by either the claimant or the dependent. Exhibit EOE4 is an internal memo of 26th day of January 2019. It is supposed to be a response to the said query that was not tendered before the court. However, this exhibit is also defective in the sense that it was not signed by its maker. Therefore, it loses or lacks credibility. On the requirement of employee to be tried before a court of competent law where the allegations borders on criminality, the law is now well settled that accusation against an employee is of settled that where accusation against an employee is of gross misconduct, involve dishonesty bordering on criminality, an employer need not wait for the outcome of any criminal prosecution before taking steps to discipline his employee. He is also neither expected to wait until when a complaint has been investigated by the police and the culprit charged to court before taking any disciplinary action against an employee. See the case of Eze versus Supreme Bank and the case of Okunola versus CBN. See also Yusuf versus Union Bank. See also Arinze versus First Bank of Nigeria. See also Africa Newspaper Limited and another versus Mr. Jacob O. Akano. On fair hearing, it is about opportunity to be heard. This can be oral or in writing. Where an employee is questioned and is queried and he has given answers to the query, then such can also amount to fair hearing. The case of Imonike versus Unity Bank decides that an employee give query and answering the query satisfies the requirement of fair hearing or according opportunity to the claimant to state his own case. In view of the foregoing findings, I shall answer the questions posed for resolution as follows. 1. The claimant having left the services of the defendant as far back as 11th day of March 2019 by the Exhibit C, his dismissal by the Exhibit E has no basis in law, as the defendant no longer has disciplinary control over the claimant when on 2nd day of June 2022 by the Exhibit A, the defendant purportedly dismissed the claimant from service. Therefore, there was no valid dismissal of claimant by the letter of 2nd day of June 2022, Exhibit E, as claimant was no longer a member of staff of the claimant to be subjected to such kind of disciplinary action. On question 2, since this court has found that there was no valid dismissal, question 2 becomes redundant, hypothetical, and academic, and therefore need not to be further inquired into. On question 3, a similar conclusion is reached. That is to say, since there was no valid dismissal, the question is redundant, hypothetical, and academic, and is hereby discountenanced. Question 4, since no valid dismissal, the purported dismissal is wrongful. On question 4, the claimant is claiming for the sum of 500 million naira as damages. The law regarding damages in employment is very clear and is very clear. It is the law that damages payable in employment is for the sum equivalent to the notice that an employee or employer is entitled to for determination of employment. In the case at hand, there was no even such claim before the court. So this court cannot grant the claim for damages as there was no basis for it. The claimant has not even disclosed his salaries from which the court may be able to determine how much is his salary and what he is entitled to. From my finding above, the order this court is to make is that the purported letter of dismissal issued on 2nd day of June 2022 dismissing the claimant was not valid as it was made without bias. As at the time it was made, claimant was no longer a staff of the defendant. 2, the said dismissal as evidence in Exhibit E is hereby set aside as the resignation of the claimant is automatic and does not require any acceptance from anybody or person. In the circumstances of this case, I award 100,000 naira cost in favor of the claimant against the defendant. Judgment is entered accordingly.
As the court places.
Court please.
My Lord, we are very much obliged, sir.
You are welcome.
We thank you for exposing the law. We are grateful, sir.
Thank you very much for your well-considered ruling. We are most grateful. Sorry, my lord. I couldn't access the password on time, so I couldn't log in on time. So sorry for the claimant, my lord.
I can record you if I cannot see you. I cannot record you if I cannot see you.
Okay, my lord.
It's only those who made themselves visible that are recorded as present.
Okay, my lord.
Yes, registrar.
My
Any
lord.
other business?
No, my lord, that's all for today, my lord.
Okay, thank you, counsel, for your cooperation.
Thank you,
I
my lord.
think you can discontinue with the sitting. Thank you very much, counsel.
I'm grateful, my lord. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much.